I'm Alan.
And I'm Janet. We live in Australia and we just did exactly what you said. We ran around the perimeter of Australia and we ran a marathon every day for a whole year to run 15,782 kilometers.
No days off.
No days off.
No days off. And is that any kind of record?
Yes, it is. It's a world record. It's a world record, many actually, but setting world records for the most consecutive marathons, especially the fact that we're, as you said, no spring chickens, so we're both in our 60s, so there's male and female, oldest to do that, and also we're both raw vegan, 100%. I don't think that's ever been done by a raw vegan before. And we did it in barefoot shoes, so that's another little goodie to throw in. There they are.
Okay, so you said you did this on raw food, and we were having a talk a little while ago, and you confirmed what I've experienced, long distance exercise and types of foods eaten.
Yeah.
So what did you find when you were out there? What was powering you for a lot of this?
Our main food for most of the time was fresh seasonal fruit. So coming up the east coast of the country, that's all tropical and beautiful, wonderful fruit that we had. And that's basically what we had the whole way up there. And that was a quarter of the way. And then we got into areas where there wasn't that kind of food, and so we had to think differently. We got food that was going to keep for the distance that we had to get across that area to the next place where we could get food. So we had to sort of go into having, instead of fresh green salads, it had to be coleslaw with cabbage and carrots and beets grated, and that was going to keep. So we were eating more the kind of food that we might not have necessarily eaten normally in our diet. And because we were running a marathon a day, we wanted to make sure that we were getting, the right kind of balance there. And we were concerned that maybe that wasn't going to be enough in the way of, good sugar for fuel. So what we did ahead of time was we dehydrated a whole bunch of bananas. So we took 2,000 dehydrated bananas with us. And so in places when we ran out of the fruit that we took in the beginning, we would then have bananas and the dehydrated bananas or dates or something like that. So that worked really well, and until we got it at about halfway around. And so by that time, we were into having done a lot of marathons by that time, and the body was physically sort of into that habit. But we were finding that we were needing certain things depending on the different climate and the different terrain that we were on. So every day was a different marathon. And so what we were finding was, because we were actually obviously losing weight with all that exercise and not being able to basically eat enough at some of the time when it wasn't available for us. So what we found was that we were starting to feel the feelings of going into towards the end of the run. We would find that we were the body was basically eating fat, which we didn't have any of. So we were starting to crave something with some fat. And what we were able to get once we got into that area was avocados. And being that it's a fruit and it does have a fat level, and we don't normally have that all the time, we certainly have some, occasionally, but what we found was if we had one or even a half an avocado, depending on the day, at the end of the run, it instantly satisfied that feeling. And it's not something we would normally do, but it's not something you normally do, is run a marathon every day either. So when you're doing something that extreme in the way of exercise, something that is going to keep going on and on and on for that length of time, like we talk about endurance running, but this is, I don't think there's a word for it, but apart from consecutive endurance running and not having done it.
Endurance running.
Yeah, prolonged endurance running. So you have to think ahead to be able to fulfill that commitment that you've made towards that goal, and know that you're getting it right to be able to keep going. Physically, we knew we could keep going, but we had to make sure that we were getting the right kind of food to create that situation. Once we were, when we were starting to feel those things, then we had to do what we had to do at the time to get the right food. So even though we normally eat a low-fat, raw vegan diet, and we wouldn't normally eat, an avocado a day, we definitely found that during that time, that's what worked. And you might want to talk about what else we had with the avocado. That was kind of good too.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I mean, also with this avocado, we found, I think we were also maybe craving a bit of salt. So we used to have some olives, maybe half a dozen olives, a couple of nice, juicy, sun-dried tomatoes, if you couldn't always get fresh. So that was our first thing we ate when we stopped. Then our crew would usually make us a juice. The juice was usually just beetroot, carrot, apple and ginger, perhaps, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we would drink that fairly quickly as soon as we finished. And then we'd have a salad.
Yeah.
And,
So it was just the way of doing it. And that wasn't all, it wasn't happening all the time, but it certainly happened at times. And at those times you have to listen to what your body's telling you. And our body was telling us, okay, this is what you need today, and we'd get that message loud and clear. And so we had to make sure that we had, that kind of thing. And avocados are just great for that. If we're doing that. I mean, if we'd been able to get durian, maybe we'd have had that for the fun. But no, that wasn't possible. So yeah, it was an interesting experiment, which is exactly what it was, because every day was different, and the conditions were different. The only thing that wasn't different is that we ran a marathon every day. So
I have to say too that I'm sure some days we didn't get it right, because the next day, some days 42k seemed like nothing on some days. Other days 42k
was a long way.
60 kilometres.
Yeah.
But then we'd learn after a couple of days, we think, what did we have last night? What did we eat yesterday? Why are we feeling a bit down today?
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's usually a reason for that.
Yeah. And because of what we were doing, it was pretty easy to sort of think back and look back at what that was. And we were doing that as we were running as well. We had crew with us who were there if we needed more water. Like some days we were running in 44 degrees heat. And
Celsius.
Yeah. It wasn't that cold. It was definitely that hot though. And so, we were needing more water more often. And sometimes on those days, all we wanted was some juicy stone fruit. And that worked on the East Coast, but it wouldn't have worked, somewhere else where, like on the West Coast, we experienced extreme cold. So, we had to work with where we were and what the circumstances were, and keep working at it and listening to what we needed, and it worked. Had we just sort of thought, okay, we're just going to eat this and that's going to work? No, it doesn't work that way. You have to listen to your body and do what you need and keep doing what you need. And sometimes we had to tweak it a little bit here and there, but we still ate 100% raw vegan. But some of the items that we were eating, we ate more of at certain times and others less of at certain times, depending on the situation. I mean, when we ran across the southern part of Australia, it took us 27 days to get across, and there's nothing out there. You can't buy food, so we had to stock up with food, and we stocked up with the most beautiful fruits and vegetables, all organic, wonderful. We were able to do that because we were leaving an area that we could get that food. But when we got to the other end, and that we still had a little bit to go, and we didn't have, it was starting to get less and less, we really had to watch what was going on, and watch what was happening even throughout each day. And so rather than eat maybe we were used to having 10 bananas in our smoothie, if we didn't really need to have those 10 bananas that day, then we were watching what was going to happen here. So we might have only had 5 and then just watched what happened throughout the day. And other times it might be halfway through the marathon, the crew would be there with a bunch of bananas and some water, and we would just sit there and eat all the bananas and they'd be gone. And other days we'd maybe have 1. So you really do have to listen to what your body's telling you.
Yeah, there is no one solution that works all the time, every
No, absolutely
day,
not.
for
No.
every person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, there's a base, and certainly there's a base we've been following for 13 years, and it works wonderfully. It's great, but there's certain times and certain places, circumstances where you just have to listen up and follow what your body's telling you, and it's going to have the right answer. You just have to listen.
Did it ever tell you to eat chia seeds?
Yes, I thought you'd never
yes.
ask. This run that we did, which was 27 days between shots, we actually did run out of food pretty much, except for a few things, on the 24th day. So we still had 3 days to go, not much food, but we did have a lovely big sack of organic chia seeds,
Yeah.
organic almonds, and organic raisins or sultanas. So we had chia. Our staple food for 3 days was chia, sultanas, and almonds. The almonds we made into milk. The raisins we soaked, and the juice from the raisins we used to thicken up the chia. And we were surprised how well we ran on
Yeah.
that.
It was 3 cheers a day.
3 cheers. And that's a fair amount of protein.
And lots
Bit
of
more
other
than
goodies.
usual, but we ran. It was easy to digest, and we ran well on that
Yeah, it
for
was
the last 3 days.
another interesting experiment. And it was also interesting from the point of view that it was getting towards the end of the overall run. So where some people might have thought that we were getting pretty tired by then, we actually found that we were getting faster, and it was getting easier. And so, there's various different reasons why that was happening. Maybe because we're getting close to home, we just want to get there. But we were still able to go ahead and do 3 marathons back to back on chia pudding. It was brilliant. Yeah.